Hi, my name is Joslyn Thompson-Raw and this is Listen Loudly. Today I am interviewing the incredible Madeleine Penfold, or Mads. She's a phenomenal photographer who focuses on women's sport, and I love where our conversation went today. The first time I met her, she approached me randomly. I was working with a group of young people, and through our very small exchange, I said to her, I like your vibe, and I'm very much a vibe check person. Meeting her then, seeing what she's doing now, the impact that she's having on storytelling women's sport is huge. Her connection and used to connect with her subjects, linking back to her meditation and yoga, is a really important piece, I think, of the soft skills she's developed as a photographer. So I really hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did, and see you on the other side. Madeleine, hello. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. Very happy to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you on this season 2 of Listen Loudly. Tell people who you are, what you do, and then we'll go through everything else.
I'm Mads. I work mostly as a photographer. I do a little bit of directing as well. I've done that for coming up to 8 years now for myself. Okay. Before that, I was running a studio in Manchester, working in the world of production. I work in the space of sports mostly. I love people. I love differences. I love culture. I'm a very curious person, which I think is why I'm a photographer. And I guess that's who I am in my day job. There's probably many iterations of me, but that is, I'll keep it there for now.
So we first met, for I think quite a few people don't know this actually, but I, when I was still at Nike, myself and many of my colleagues at the time ran level 3 personal training program for young people in Croydon. And we had a whole process of recruitment. And in the end, I want to say we had, gosh, number wise, how many was it? Was it maybe 25, 30, something like that? And we took them through level 3. And I remember I had not long had Max, my youngest. I used to travel just once a week and teach. My colleagues did the rest of it. But I was very much part of the kind of development of it when I was still pregnant with Max. But you and I met when I was taking them through a training session outside, right?
So my memory of meeting you is, I think it was around 2019, definitely pre-pandemic. And it was in my era of, I lived in Manchester at the time, but I really wanted to pursue working outside of Manchester, and I was coming to London a lot, and I was really inspired by like the sports and fitness scene in London. So I was like going in and out of London, and there was this one time, it was on a field somewhere in East London, and I was either on the way back from a meeting or a shoot. I definitely had my camera on me, and I remember seeing this group of people in the park, really cool young people, and they were all doing
Not
like
me.
fitness.
I don't include myself in that.
No, you were one of them.
Young cool people and Joslyn. Yeah,
I didn't say that. Young cool people, including you, and you were all doing fitness, and you were like jumping up and down. Just the energy of this group was insane. And I had my camera, and I was like, this looks like a group of people for me. So I went over, and I remember thinking, they're going to think I'm such a weirdo just going to approach them, asking if I can take pictures of them, but what have I got to lose? So I remember going over to you because you look like you're in charge, and I introduced myself, something like, hey, I'm Mads, I'm a photographer. I specialize in like sports and fitness. Like, what is this group of people? You explained, and I was like, oh my God, it's like, do you think they'd mind if I went and asked them if they wanted some pictures? Like, would that help for their profiles? And you were like, yeah, I think so, go ask. So I was like, okay. So I walked over to them, trying to like hype myself up to feel confident enough. And I just remember you going, hey, and I turned around and you went, I like your vibe. And then that was like the little stamp of approval. And then I went over and asked them if I could take some pictures of them, and they were all so warm. They instantly were like showing me their best moves, and there was a pistol squat from one of them, and I got some great pictures. And I follow quite a few of them still on Instagram, and I kept in touch with them, and I even carried on working with 2 of the girls afterwards, invited them in to do a studio shoot to create more profile shots for them. So
yeah, amazing.
That is how we met, and then we kept in touch, and you invited me to a few more things.
Yeah. And actually they are, same thing. I follow so many of them still. That project was something that we, at the time we were talking about delivering quality training in the fitness industry. But in order to become a qualified PT, you had to do these courses which were thousands of pounds, or you could do a course, but it might just be online, and you just wouldn't have the level of hands-on and kind of practical experience that we felt was necessary to be able to start in the industry and then sustain a career in the industry. That was why it was developed. So obviously it was delivered for free, but seeing now what some of them are doing is just incredible. And it just really speaks to something that I'm very passionate about, which is ensuring that people have access who otherwise wouldn't have it. And when that happens, just absolute magic happens as a result of that. So they're still out there, they're still doing their thing, because the fitness industry itself, and again, I wonder how the numbers have changed now, but when I qualified over 20 years ago, the stats were, you did your qualification and then a high percentage of people went back to their other jobs or switched careers or whatever. And in the end, I think a very, very small percentage of people were able to sustain that. So I think it wasn't just the education piece in terms of movement and qualification, all of that, but it was, how do you get into the industry and stay in the industry? And we felt that because amongst all of us coaches, we just had quite a lot of experience. So it was really great to be able to translate that to them and see what they're doing now. So, okay, cool. So that's how we met, and I liked your vibe. So I knew this, I'm just you could just tell with people, right? And I loved that you came up and just said, this is going to sound really random, but do you mind? And to me, that's somebody just like taking a chance and just going for it. And I couldn't love that more. So I'm really glad that you did. So from there, met you. I know that then you came and you took some photos at one of my Women in Fitness summits, which was actually the last one that I've run. So that was 2019. And then from there, what happened? So are you now permanently in London, or are you still in Manchester?
Pretty much. I'm mostly in London. I still go back to Manchester quite a bit because, as you'll know, I work a lot in football. So Manchester has two of the biggest sports teams there.
Yes.
And I still have loads of friends and family in there. And also Manchester has its own vibe going on. I find it's a very grounding place. And I go back there a lot, but mostly London is where I am.
One of the last times I met you, because I've seen you a couple of times since the summit, between then and now, when I see what you're doing, I'm like, whoa. So talk to me more about that. How has it all gone since our Women in Fitness Summit meet? What has that looked like from there?
Okay, well, firstly, I want to say
where do you start, literally?
It's hard. I think I don't know if you find this, but when you're running your own business or kind of on your own path, I rarely take big breaks out or big moments to like understand what's gone on. So it's really only in like the rare conversations like this when you have to reflect back on like 4 or 5 years worth of a journey, and then you're like, how did I get there? I feel like you kind of have to be so present in the moment of what you're doing, and like there's always something else that's coming up. So it's, you're focusing so much on one thing, and then before you know it, you're onto the next thing, and then that has all your attention. So it's really interesting to now try and summarize a whole journey, but I'll do my best. And just on your note of saying that you like my vibe and you're a believer in energy, I think there's a reason that I went over to you, and there was a reason that I was being pulled constantly to London and wanting that as a space to explore. And I think what is really in my heart and things that I want to do with my work as a photographer, like I see myself as a photographer, I have the ability to tell stories, and I create images that are seen by people, and those images are used by mainstream media or brands, and those things like mainstream media and brands have immense influence on people, especially the younger generation, to build an idea of what's possible. And it's like a reflection of what's happening in society. And for younger people or anyone looking at images, and our world is filled with images and video, and that is a reflection of what's happening in society and in culture. So I believe that my role is to contribute to that in a way that allows people to feel included and encourages people to get up and go do something that they want to do, rather than making them feel excluded. So to come back to when I met you, I think what I saw that day on the field was a group of young people, super diverse, different body shapes and sizes, different ethnicities, different genders. And I just thought, like, who are these guys? I have to know. And then you were explaining to me about what the program was and how Croydon was a particular area that you wanted to focus on. And that, was such a special shoot for me, because it was exactly the sort of thing that I want to be doing. And it was an option for me, or an experience for me, that allowed me to get close to people and discuss with people and see firsthand the difference that fitness made in their lives. And for me to be able to photograph that and go on that journey with them in a small way was really powerful, and still is really powerful. So what have I been doing from then until now?
It gives me goosebumps thinking about that. Like thinking, I guess, as you say, as an outsider looking in and just going, wait, like all of these people are having fun here. This is such a diverse group of people in so many ways, and they're coming together through movement. And that in itself, just as an outsider looking in, you are intrigued, you are curious, you're like, what is this? And because we came at it from this matters, this is important that this happens, this is important that these young people are given opportunity. And we were so in it, I never really thought about how it would be perceived from the outside. But you've just explained that really well, and I can see, it would have been like, what's this?
Yeah. And it seemed accessible as well, because it was kind of normal teenage or young adults. It wasn't like professional athletes. Although some of them I'm sure now are professional athlete level, but it was just, I believe that they're the sort of people that can really inspire people to get moving and create a movement. It's that relatability. So, and like movement is such a big thing for me. That is something that has always been important to me, and I haven't realized how important that is. And when I was younger, I kind of I was part of that generation that didn't have sports as accessible to them. Like there were no lionesses like there are now to be able to see. And for me as a younger version, to look at the landscape of what we're seeing in mass media and think, okay, if I want to be a professional footballer, I can. If I want to be in the Olympics, I can. Like it was there if you really searched for it, but it was not immediately visible. So I idolized the Manchester United boys, where it was like Becks and Giggs and Scholes, and that inspired me to play football. But as I got older, the realization was, I love them and I want to play, but for me to do this as a career, it's not possible. So I stopped playing and I stopped moving. And I think when people fall out of sports, you fall out of a sense of community, and you fall out of a sense of belonging, and you learn so many things through sport and being part of a team. There's a stat that's how many people make it to how many women are in the boardroom. There's like a correlation to how many of them played sports in either college or high school. Wow. And the likelihood is if that you were part of a team and you play sports, you're gonna get further in your career, because you, like I said, you learn so many things. Teamwork, losing gracefully as well. So many things. So anyway, picking up a camera was my new thing as a younger person and a teenager. And that became my way of like exploring and connecting for people, and satisfied a creative itch that I had. And then it kind of came together quite by accident, the space of photographing footballers. I had an opportunity when I was 23 years old, working in a studio in Manchester. I had an opportunity to go and photograph Roberto Firmino, who was playing for Liverpool at the time. And my portfolio was mostly in nightclub photography. I was a photographer at uni that I loved music. I loved house music. I loved drum and bass music. Manchester's got a great scene for that. So I used to do pictures of like DJs and night. So I had this like, a portfolio that I was pretty proud of, that I didn't think crossed over to sports, but I realized that there was a kind of a look in my portfolio that if you applied it to the space of sports, it wasn't too dissimilar. So I went and took a chance and photographed Roberto Firmino. And it just kind of snowballed from there, really. And I think at the time there wasn't many female photographers in that space. So I think that kind of gave me a competitive advantage because, if you're unique in a space, people are going to take notice. So the way that it works on shoots with footballers is there will usually be a super shoot, which means that the brand will invite lots of different crews because the brand has access to a footballer for like one day. So what the brand will do is they'll invite lots of different crews to get different parts of content. So therefore you're usually in a massive space and you're sharing that space. The space is divided up and you're sharing it with multiple photographers or directors. So you kind of get to see who everybody else is and what they're doing, kind of. People try and keep it secret, and there's things that are like behind black curtains, but
gatekeeping.
Sure, a little bit of that. But I mean, you should have seen me. I did not get the etiquette. I did not get the gatekeeping vibe at all. On my first day in a massive studio, for me, it was like being in Disneyland. I was like, whoa, like, look at this studio setup. I was going around to all the sets and introducing myself to all the photographers and being like, so what are you doing here? And they're like, so cool and so standoffish. And they're like, like just kind of not really speaking to me. But I was amazed. I love photography and I love the world of production. I was running a studio at the time, so I was fascinated in that world. And on this day, they had photographers from like New York and LA and Paris. So I was really curious. So on that day, I was the only female photographer. And the next shoot I did after that, I went out to Madrid. And again, I was the only female photographer. But I didn't notice this until somebody came up to me. She was an intern. She came up to me and she said, "It is so good to see you here." And I was like looking at her thinking, oh no, I don't know who this person is. And I've forgotten. So I was like, "It's so good to see you too." I said, where
Yes,
remind me where we've met. Remind me where we've met. And she was like, "No, I don't think we've met. I'm just saying that it's really good to see another female here." And I was like, oh. And I looked around. We were in a stadium, so you could easily see all the pockets of production. And the only females on set, as you can imagine, were the producers, the makeup, the stylists, maybe like a production manager, but every single other creative or every single other person in the driving seat, in the decision-making seat, in the crafting of an image that goes out to a world that is diverse was all men of a similar age, of a similar ethnicity. And I was like, I was like, okay. But I couldn't really comprehend at that time why that was important. I was just like, okay. But then as I went through my journey in photography and my experience on set, you're constantly meeting people and people would just automatically assume that I was a producer, or I'd walk into sets sometimes, they'd be like, "Hey, oh, is it makeup?" And I'd be like, "No,
no, bro, here's my camera."
Yeah, or they'd shake my assistant's hand, who was usually a boy, and they'd be like, "Hey, like, how are you? Like, let me show you to this way." And my assistant would always be like, "Well, you might want to see the photographer first." And then people would be like, "Oh my God," like embarrassed at their mistake. But there was that, programmed just assumption that I couldn't possibly, as a 24, 25-year-old woman, be the photographer. But have I seen it change now? Yeah, it's so much better than what it used to be. There's so many more girls that are doing it, and there's so many more also non-binary people. I worked with a non-binary assistant recently. Diversity. There's definitely a big focus on that, but it's one of those things where I don't know if it's because that is something that I think is really important. Diversity on set and working with diverse crews, that because of that I've pushed myself into being more in those circles and those spaces. And I work with production companies now who put forward their values of diversity at the forefront. Generally it's certainly a lot better than when I started out 7-8 years ago.
Because also I guess as well, you saying that the importance of the images that you get, and I guess for people to see themselves in those images. If I think about a production set, it seems like it's a fairly closed thing. Do you know what I mean? So I'm thinking about how that change came about, because you don't necessarily openly see it? So obviously there's been some change and some shift, or is it that exactly that you put yourself in those spaces? That is one of your values. It is something that's important to you. And so, that you're proactively putting yourself in those spaces, working with different people, because from a decision making perspective, as you say, if it was all the same type of person, then that is it's so closed.
I think research beforehand is so important, because you used the word like closed set before, and it can be a vulnerable thing. Like, athletes have a lot of confidence, yes, but they have a lot of confidence in their field, in their sport. Put them into a different environment, like, they're not comfortable in front of a camera. So what do I need to know about them that is going to help me understand how this person may react, or like cultural are they going to understand what I'm saying? Is what I'm going to ask them to do, is that going to translate? Is that what we need? So I think research is so important.
I was in New York recently. We crossed paths, didn't we? We were at there at slightly different times. I felt like I had a real New York moment, because I was sat at a bar. I was having dinner just by myself, and I was chatting to this really lovely guy. He lived just around the corner from where I was eating, and his husband worked a lot in London. We just got into this conversation about sort of honing your craft and being able to really kind of go down rabbit holes in your craft. And we were both saying that, we'd both started our careers kind of pre-internet, if you like, where you just got to just really focus on your work. You talking about, and essentially, we were saying that you laid these solid foundations then that no one can take away from you effectively. You saying that, ahead of a shoot, you do your research, you make sure your crews are prepped. That to me is an obvious reason of why you're so successful now, and you will continue to be successful, because you have that care. Not only, however many years ago did you go, fuck it, I'm just going to go up to this random person who I don't know, and I'm just going to, so you had that sort of like, there might be an opportunity here, let me just go. But also, you're not then someone who's winging it. You're putting in the work, you're doing the research. All of your values are deep in your work, and it really, really shows. And your point around, yes, athletes are phenomenal in their field, but put them, in front of a camera and get them to do what they do on a football pitch or on a track or wherever. And it's different, because all of a sudden then they're absolutely not in their zone, first of all, but they are having to act out something that is, is their kind of natural flow. And I remember that so I used to do with Nike, I was like, I guess, the movement person who would connect the photographer with the athlete with what they wanted the final shot to be. I remember the very first person I worked with was Katarina Johnson-Thompson, and we were on a helipad in Spain, and God bless her, she had to run over this same feckin' X on the spot, for
like a million times,
half a day, and it was her first shoot, because she had just been signed to Nike at that stage. It was my first shoot doing that kind of thing, understanding how to connect all three, the photographer, the athlete, that what they wanted the end project to be is a real skill, and you treat them all differently. Like how you communicate with the athlete, you're like, look, I've got you. I know that you're going to be doing the same thing again and again and again. Just checking in on how they are, making sure that the end product is what it wants, and making sure that also the photographer. So it's such a brilliant skill. I love it. I think it's the best ever, and I've not done it in such a long time. But it feels like it's one of those hidden skills that when you nail it, you're like, fuck yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to do a shoot, Joslyn. We'll do something together.
We will.
It's so interesting that you say that, though, because I honestly feel like where sports and creatives meet, I just find it the most fascinating marriage of two entities. And the reason why is because what I've observed with athletes is that to be a successful athlete, and you'll probably know this from your background and work in fitness, you have to be so disciplined, so methodical at times, so like you're on this treadmill and you're on this path of you have to hit targets. So I think the way an athlete's brain works is almost the opposite of how a creative's brain works. The way that a creative's brain works is like, you know, let it do a loop-de-loop, like let it run away and then come back around to something, and like, you know, its thoughts and its feelings and its flow. And I mean, I guess there is similarities because athletes need to kind of drop into that flow state. But I find that sometimes the language that each individual is speaking, sometimes they can just completely miss each other. And I think as well, like something that I'm hyper aware of when I'm working with athletes on set is that they're like physiologically, like their nervous system is rigged in a different way. Like they want to get in and out because not only are they probably exhausted from training and they've got other things coming up, like a game where the whole world is watching. Like I think their nervous system is rigged in such a way that they want to be moving. They want to be doing things. They want to be in, they want to be out. Like they're hyper alert. Whereas a director traditionally may want to take their time and like feel into something. And that is going to be so frustrating for an athlete. And this is where having a really good understanding of that and being able to work at speed, but also being able to try and drop into some sort of flow state and sync up with an athlete so that they can do what they need to do. It's, you know, like when you achieve that on set, it's like this magical feeling. And you know, it's over in 2 minutes, because my shoots are a little different to the one on the helipad with your friend, where usually when I'm working with an athlete, I have like 2-3 minutes to get the shot. I don't have the luxury of getting them to do it again and again and again.
First of all, I absolutely agree with that, how they're wired and how they're programmed. And I'm going to come back to another point on that. But also it's obviously as a photographer, you have, you know, the hard skills, like, you know, all the, I don't know, whatever lenses and all of that stuff that I've got no idea about. So you know all of that kind of you know,
the technical stuff, the camera stuff and the light stuff.
Yeah, but it's the soft skills. Truly, I do not. But it's the soft skills that brings everything to life. It's that understanding of an athlete and how they're so different, and how you have to nail that shot that captures whatever essence. And for you, having, you know, a short amount of time, that is sharpening that skill down to such an art, which is amazing. But also you saying about that sort of like how, I guess, hardwired their nervous system is to perform. I on my season 1 interviewed Lucy Bronze, and she was talking about the difference between playing for Spanish clubs and English clubs, and how the English clubs are very much like the US. It was very much data driven, numbers, whereas when she was playing for Spanish clubs, it was very much at the end of a training session, you know, how did you feel? How did you feel here? And it was very, very feelings based. And I asked her, do you have a preference for either? And I think she said that when she first went to play at a Spanish club, it was odd for her. She was like, why are you asking me about my feelings? Yeah. But then she understood that so much of the play there was passion driven. Yeah. And for me, when you said that about the athlete being hardwired, and you know, the photographer or the creative being like, let me just go in this sort of, you know, flow, and she had experienced both this sort of like hardwiredness, and then this like be in that flow, be in your feelings, be in, you know, and she, I think I want to say, I think she preferred in the end, but hadn't for a while. I think in the end she said she preferred the sort of like slightly more data side of things, less of the passion side. But I think that she felt that she had been able to take that with her and utilize that and, you know, understand it.
Yeah.
So it's just it's just really, really different perspectives, right, of how
Yeah.
to do the
It's
same thing.
for sure. It's so interesting. And that actually reminds me of a friend that has moved to Spain recently, and she's put her son in school. He's really young. I think he's like 4 years old. And she was saying that the way that the teachers treat him in comparison to the teachers in England, she was like, it's so much about the individual and how he's progressing and his emotions and how he's
Wow.
feeling, rather than, she was like, we didn't get any of that at the school that we were at in Manchester. So I don't know if that is generally like a big cultural difference between English and Spanish. It's funny because I was with two French friends last night after I did a photo shoot with them. And we were
Yeah.
talking about the stereotypes of British politeness and French like
Yeah.
directness, and how
Yeah.
that can be, how that can make a difference in like the world of work and business and different approaches. But I think something that only like my closest friends know about me, that isn't immediately obvious, is that before I was doing photography, I taught yoga for maybe
Right.
3 or 4 years. And having that as a practice, obviously I still do yoga now and I've done it for quite a while, but having that as a practice and having that as such a big part of my life, to the point where I learned it and did many trainings, and then I was teaching it, so much about that practice. And you might feel the same way with your students, is that each individual is on their own journey. So much of it is about a person's mindset. So much of it is about feeling and intuition and a sense. And I think that is something that has stayed with me now on set. So when I go into a shooting environment, yes, I've done research into understanding who that person is, where they grew up, because I think where they grew up and their language and their culture is going to have a big impact on who they are, no matter what country they're playing in now. Yes, I do all of that research, but then I also kind of like to forget it at the last minute.
Yeah.
And it's like, have you heard that? Have you heard that quote that's like, have a plan, but then expect the plan to go wrong? Like, I kind of say this on all my shoots. It's like, here's the plan. And now that we have a plan, it's fine to like deviate from the plan. But at least if we get lost, we have something to go back to. So I think it's nice to have that knowledge of an athlete or anyone that I'm working with, because I don't just shoot athletes. I work with other people. But I think it's nice to have an understanding, but then kind of leave that at the door, because it would also be very assuming to think that just because I've read about what this person does, or I've asked someone who knows about them, just because I've read this online, that is actually true. Because how you feel today on a Friday, you might wake up tomorrow and be the different version of Joslyn. Like, we all are so multifaceted as individuals. That if I go in and I'm like, oh my God, like I know Mary Epps is such a fun person, and then I get on set and it's a little bit different, then I'm going to be in a situation where it's quite jarring. So you kind of just need to be, you know, meeting that individual where they're at on that day and doing all that in 2 minutes if you're working with an athlete.
Yeah. No, I love that. And that's something that I try and drill, and I'm sure people are so fed up of me saying it, but to, you know, when I'm coaching, exactly that, like, meet your body where it's at today. And I think that people can sometimes mistake that for me being this sort of like soft style coaching. I would say I'm a calm coach. Even when I'm making you work hard, I'm calm, because that's how I liked to be coached when I was working hard. Like, don't be bringing chaos to me. Don't be shouting in my face, because that's, you're not going to get anything out of me. If you seem like you're if you seem like you're calm and regulated, I'll follow you to the end of the earth. So that's how I coach. But I think that the importance of that, and the importance of meeting yourself where you're at, is because it allows you to make decisions when the going gets tough. Like, if you're constantly, like, let's say, for example, if you've researched an athlete and, as you say, they're not showing up as what you've read about them online, then where do you go from there? And if you're still like treating them like, you know, the person you read about it's just not gonna work if they're not that presentation of themselves on that day.
Yeah.
But as you say, you've done, you've prepped yourself, and then it's like, okay, well, let's just flow with what happens, and you almost switch into that, you know, what's the vibe today,
Of the day.
where are we at today? And because you have to get the best out of that person, you need to lock into that as quickly as possible, because I can't believe you've got 2 or 3 minutes. When I see some of your shots, I'm like, what?
I think that's what makes them exciting, though. Like, sometimes when people say, oh, we have half an hour with this person, I'm thinking, oh my God, what are we going to do in half an hour?
With
like,
half an hour,
unless there's, you know,
right.
a big shot list, I get it. But it's kind of nice to have the pressure of 3 minutes. And if I go into that, and in my mind, I'm like, I know I want this, this, and this. Like one of the first shoots I ever did with Marcelo when he played for Real Madrid. I was really into meditating at the time, like, because I was fresh out of my yoga era into photography era. So I was like, I'm just going to sit down. I was really nervous. I was like, I'm just going to sit down and visualize how I want the shoot to go. And I knew I wanted this like certain expression from him because he's such a character, right? And on the shoot day, I'm taking the pictures, like my 2 minute gets called, and instantly what happens when you know you're on, the athlete arrives, you've got 2 minutes. Of course you get this big rush of like adrenaline. So it's like, right, okay, let's go. I'm locked in, my camera's in front of my face already, I've got tunnel vision. In my ear, I can hear the producer counting down. Marcelo had arrived with a speaker in his backpack. He had the best energy. So he like drops the backpack on the floor. He had the best music on ever. So we're like in a vibe. I'm shooting him. We're having a little dance, but he's still he's being cool. And he's like giving me all the poses that, you know, like he's done a million times.
Right.
And I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, I've still not got this image that I visualized of him. And I know he's got this more of an expressive look in him. And at the same time, the producer's in my ear, like 15 seconds left, 10 seconds left. So I just like dropped my camera down and I'm like, Marcelo, I was like, show me what you do when you score a goal. And he was like, it's like this. And I was like, no, it's more than that. And then he like gave me this crazy roar, like right into the camera lens.
Oh my gosh, I need to see that
image. I'll send it to you. You can put it as the podcast picture thumbnail.
Yeah.
And then a picture of me. But that still today is one of my favorite pictures because it was just a mad moment in the moment that really caught that player and showed something different to all the other like, cool shots that we see of him. So there is something to be said for planning and having like an idea of what you want to do, but also then just like going with the vibe. But yeah, this story was about timing, wasn't it? So I think the timing of that, like having the pressure of you have to get that shot in 2-3 minutes, was helpful.
Yeah, but also like all of those little links of, yes, the pressure of the timing. You know what I mean? There's an element of sort of like, you had that, I guess, that visualization in your head of what you wanted. So you'd sort of put that, you knew you wanted to get that. I think, and maybe this is me going way too far into it, but knowing with the clock ticking as well, with that pressure of saying, you know, what do you do? And you going, no, and then getting it. Like, I personally think that when you were sat down visualizing what you wanted, that no matter what, that was going to happen. You know what I mean? Because you'd taken the moment to. And also, what I love is that, you know, you've said you're a curious person, and I love that. And again, it's something that I always encourage people to be curious on their fitness journeys. And I also say have no expectation. So it's kind of like you saying have a plan but leave everything at the door. So, you know, when they set a goal, I say set your goal, set your intention, but have no expectation, because you'll kind of miss all of the cool stuff along the way. But I just think that it would have been such a safe, you could have played it so safe and gone, these are the shots that people usually get of him, but you wanted to break the molds, you wanted to do something different, and you got that. And I love that commitment to what you wanted and you got it. Yes, under pressure, but you got it because you did. And for me, that is, I love that. I really love that.
You've got to. It's not every day
Yeah.
you get opportunities like that. So I just think if you're there in a place, like, just push a little bit harder and go and get it. I can give you another example. Recently, I was at the Paris Olympics, and it was the hottest day ever. I don't know if you were there. It was.
I was sadly not in Paris, but yeah.
It was a warm day in Paris, and I was at a tennis stadium, and Coco Gauff was playing, and I photographed Coco Gauff maybe 3 years ago now, and I find her incredibly inspiring for her journey and what she speaks about and what she stands for and the way she connects with young people. And she was playing on a few courts away from the main court that I was at, and the rest of the people that I was with, they were like, we're going to go home. Like, we're going to go back to the apartment. Like, we're so hot. We'd seen the game that we'd intended to go and watch. And even though I had no water, I had no money to buy water because you had to buy everything on a Visa card, and I didn't have a Visa card. Right. I was like, you know what? I'm only going to be in Paris. Coco is only going to be in that court across the way from me this one time. Like, let me just go and see if I can get close. And the rest of my crew went home. I walked over. It was chaos. It was really busy. And there was one game finishing, and then she was on next. So I wait for this game to finish, and I'm like, it was disgusting. If you'd seen me, I was soaking wet in sweat. It was not a sight. I had my little camera on me. I tend to, if I go to events like that, I always have a little camera on me. So I wait for the game to finish. I'm sweating, and then the stadium cleared out. And then as it cleared out, I went down. It was one of these stadiums where like the stairs go up and the tennis court is in the middle. And the stadium cleared out. So I went down, and then it got really busy, but I'd managed to sit behind the seat that Coco ended up coming out and sitting on.
No way.
And I ended up staying there for, I think, 2 hours. And I was like, I knew in my head that I just wanted to get one good action shot of her. And I did. And then I left before the game finished. But I'm so glad that I stayed, because at the time I was dehydrated. I was sweating. It was horrible. But now I have this image, and that image is one that I've recently used in an exhibition to tell the story of women in sports and the diversity within sports and how the space of women's sports is growing. So it might not be pleasant at the time, but I think if you're there, and I was already so lucky to be there. We spoke about accessibility earlier. And yeah, I always try to take a moment if I'm ever like complaining, and obviously I complain sometimes, but if I'm ever taking a moment to complain or think that it's hard or think about whatever, I'm like, let me just take a minute to realize how lucky I am to be in this situation, and how the younger version of me would have killed to be in this situation. And no one really opened those doors for me when I was younger. So just try.
Yeah. As you said earlier, it's very easy to forget, how far you've come. But I think that when you start out and you just take chances and you just see what happens, I don't think, and for me personally, but I think from what you're saying, it applies to you as well, that you have to never take for granted what you're doing, where you are, the opportunities you have, especially if you have the ability to take people with you, if you have the ability to see people who may not otherwise be seen. To me, it's like this massive responsibility. Well, I'm here now. I have to keep pushing forward, and I have to keep keeping my eyes open about what I'm doing and how I can, and not necessarily, I don't that almost sounds like loose savior complex. It's never that, but to just give access and opportunity to people so that they can go and do their thing. Like, I'm not interested in being, Joslyn help. Like, that's not the we're doing this because we want more people to benefit from the things that you could do that I can't do, but you could do if you were just given half the opportunity. It's then not this exchange of, oh, I did this for you and you did this for me. It's like, you have got so much to offer to people that I can't offer, but you just need the access and the opportunity to be able to do that. And then you can go and do that thing. And that way, my work, along with your work, along with this person's, that collectively, it gets better and it improves. But it is. It's never taking for granted how far you've come, but also knowing that the responsibility that you have to continue doing work and to continue doing good work. Now, you mentioned a recent exhibition. Do you want to talk about that? Because I think it was pretty epic. How did that come about? That's so cool.
Yeah, great question. How did that come about? So, I'll just explain that. So the exhibition that I think you're talking about is the one that I did in New York. I went to just after you left there. We missed each other by a few days. So I'll go back to, because it was all triggered by one person that I met in Cannes, which is like a creative place that like creatives go, or like advertising brand people go. And I wasn't going to go, but I've got an amazing friend called Tina, who's an entrepreneur. And she was like, I really think you should come. I think it could be really good for you. And I was like, I'm not really sure. It's not my vibe. I like making pictures and creating things and being on set. I'm not really into the whole networking thing. And she was like, if you come, you can work with one of my talent. So there you go. It's a job. So I was like, well, if it's a job, it's different. So I'll come. So I went, and I ended up meeting somebody who worked in the space of women's sports as a consultant. And she's American. She knows so much about women's sports and the progression and where it's come from. And, like she's been in the business for years and she's seen everything that's happened, and how we're at this incredible moment in time where it is starting to tip, and we're now seeing stadiums being sold out for women's games, and we're seeing things like equal pay, or just, we're still far off from that, but we're seeing big things starting to happen in that space. And she's just so well informed and well connected. And she met me at Cannes. And she saw what I was doing. She saw me there with Mary Earps. The next day I was there with Alessia Russo. The next day I was there with Lando Norris. And so she called me up and she was like, I need to know who the fuck Madeleine Penfold is. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on this podcast.
You can swear.
So she was like, who are you? So we had a chat and I basically told her my story and she told me her story. And she was like, do you fancy working on a project together that's all about documenting the rise of women's sports? And I was like, I mean, it sounds pretty much exactly what I do and what I want to continue to do. And working with someone who is as smart as you are can only be a good thing. So we went to Paris together. I took a load of images there. And then she calls me up one day and she's like, could you come to New York on these dates? I think I have an exhibition space. It's at the Christie's. So I'm like making notes on the course site. It's at the Christie's. Let me know if you can make it. And I was like, okay, what should the exhibition be about? And she's like, whatever you want. And I'm like, okay. So I go away and I Google the Christie's and then I communicate it to my partner. And I'm like, is it the Christie's? And she was like, the Christie's.
Christie.
I was like, is it like a big thing? And she's like, the Christie's auction house is huge. It's like globally known. And I'm like, right. And then I find out that at this exhibition, it's going to be more of like a dinner. And the people attending, it's a very private, closed event. Because I'm like, can I invite this person? I don't know. And my friend's in New York and can I invite this person? And she's like, no, you can't just invite all these people. It's a really closed dinner. She's like, it's a dinner for Secretary Hillary Clinton. And there's going to be many other influential people there that are all in the space of either women's sports or policy, or people who can essentially really make change in this space. Like people with power, essentially. And I was like, right, okay. So
Got
I'm
it.
like,
Not
so
nervous at
now,
all.
yeah, I'm like, so now my brief is do an exhibition on whatever you want. You can't invite
Yeah.
anyone you know, and Hillary Clinton's going to be there. And then, just that's pretty much our working relationship. It's a series of phone calls being like, hey, can you come and do this crazy thing?
Yeah.
Just, make it work. Like, do what you want, which is
Yeah.
amazing because she trusts me, but it's also incredibly
Yeah.
scary. So I spent 3 months, not 3 months, sorry. If only I had 3 months to prepare for this. I spent 3 weeks going back through my archive, which is all my
Right.
images that I've photographed over the last 8 years, going back through all of my images and trying to piece together the story that I wanted to tell on all around sports and inclusivity and the progression of women in sports. So, wow. I mean, when I say this process was like therapy, like
Really?
I can't, yeah, because think about, you're going back through 8 years worth of something that you've dedicated pretty much all your time to, and you've not really taken the time to pause and think.
Yes.
You've kind of just been, obviously I like to think that I do what I do with purpose. I do what I do with purpose. But
Yeah.
also a lot of that is I'm getting given an opportunity, or I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm kind of moving through it, and I'm so back to back with things that it's rare that
Yeah.
I get a minute to think and take
Just
stock.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, so this was the first time that I'd gone back through all my work, and I was, I did a season with Man United Women team last year, which was amazing. So I was going back through all of my images from that, and just remembering like moments and conversations, and also picking out images from campaigns and then drawing new meaning from that, and looking at pictures from, so for example, the Man United Women team season that I did with them. On the first day that I did with them, they were playing to a stadium of maybe 200 people. The last
Wow.
game that they played in the same season, they played to a stadium and it was sold out. So even
Whoa.
even like going back to what my day one was like there and where it all started, and then seeing the change for them, and it was really
Yeah.
emotional. And
Yeah.
yeah, I worked with an amazing creative director friend of mine called Satchini. She's incredible. I worked with her to kind of draw out the narrative, and she designed the booklet for me. She had absolutely no time, and she was just like, look, if I don't do it, then you don't have time to find anyone else, so I'm just gonna have to do it. So thank God
Oh.
that she was around. Yeah, I'm very, very lucky. But yeah, I created this exhibition of 10 images that told the story of my journey as a photographer and things that I had seen, but also key people, athletes in the space that had these defining moments within the rise of women's sports. And the exhibition took place at the Christie's, and there was, I'd say, about 20 people there. Secretary Clinton was at the center, and there were other people there like ESPN presenters, someone who like helped set up Angel City, which is a massive football team in LA. Just so like people who work really high up at Google, but all big like decision makers, who wanted to learn, who wanted to have conversation, who
Yeah.
wanted to understand what could be done to make sports more accessible, more inclusive, for girls and women, and what they needed to do with the power that they held. And yeah, it was terrifying because I had to speak about my work, which, isn't something I do super often. I'm behind the lens for a reason.
Yes.
So having to stand up and put that into words was scary,
Yeah.
but I did it, and it was amazing because there were so many supportive people in that room, and I think that was really special. In fact, one of them was your friend Kirsten, who I believe is another Peloton trainer.
Yeah. Kirsten Ferguson. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And
So
even
good. Yeah.
looking over to her, and when you're doing a tour, I was looking over to her, and she looked so proud the whole time. And at the end, she came up to me and she was like, I was like a proud mom, like filming you. And I was like, yeah, but you know what? You doing that just helped spur me on. It's like women supporting women. It was cool. And
Yeah.
it was a real like pinch me moment. I hadn't been back to New York for 10 years. And actually, it was being in New York when I was 21 that solidified my why to being a photographer.
Right.
And that was because when I went to New York, where do you go as a tourist, right? You go to Times Square, you see, Times Square is pretty much like the pinnacle of like advertising billboards, right? It's
Yeah.
literally a
Yeah.
square
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
skyscrapers,
Ads. Yeah.
billboards, ads. Yeah. And
Yeah.
what do these ads tell you? These ads tell you how to look, how to think, how to feel, what is accepted in society, what's cool. Like all these things are messages that are going into our brains every day. So, and when I was there, I just come off the back of teaching at a summer camp for 2 months where I was teaching film and photography to kids, age 4 years old to 16 years old, every day for 2 months. And wow, if there's any experience that's going to teach you how influential the media is, it's being around young people and understanding how they interpret and how they learn, how they should be and what is acceptable. So after having this experience teaching young people and then going to Times Square, it kind of just clicked in my head. I was like, I want to look up to these billboards and see images and messages that inspire people to reach the best version of themselves, to go after things that are going to make them feel great, to do good in the world, because that is surely better than the aim being super skinny, like unhealthily skinny, and just purchasing loads of things that we probably don't need. So I remember coming back from New York age 21, like, this is what I want to do. And then of course I'm like, I don't have no idea how I'm gonna get there.
Forget about the how.
Forget about the how. It was definitely a bumpy 10 years, I can tell you that. But we're gonna need another podcast for that whole story. But yeah, to be in New York 10 years after that and to be stood in a room presenting images to very important people on that subject, I was like, okay, maybe I'm kind of on the right track.
Kind of. Are you joking? Like, absolutely on the right track. And that's it. Like, if you're in a room full of decision makers and you're able to tell that story and your job is to tell stories through imagery and imagery is powerful, like, that's just incredible, right? So when I saw that, I was like, come on, that is so good. But it's just, again, just testament to, I'll go back to it, your curiosity, your care, obviously that moment of knowing how young kids are influenced by what they see, and to ensure that what they see is something that's going to empower them rather than make them pick themselves apart and not feel that they're living up to whatever the standard is. So
For sure.
So I always ask people, so the name of this podcast is Listen Loudly, and it's because I think you have to listen loudly to yourself in order to be heard by others. Is there a moment in your life where you felt you listened loudly to yourself, and what was that? Well, I feel like you've already said quite a few.
I feel like the times that I can listen loudly to myself is when it's really quiet. So whenever I've taken myself away out of the madness, taken a minute from my phone, away from my phone, and really allow everything to fall away, and then you hear the voice inside you, and it's like you can't run to distraction. So I try and go away every Christmas, because I find that Christmas is the only time that as a freelancer you're not going to get disturbed or distracted, or you're not going to let someone down, because you don't really have holidays. So I go away each Christmas because that's like my switch off time, and I go to the Gambia, which is West Africa. I've been going there since I was 19. It is a place that's so special in my heart, and I just strip everything back and live really simply. And I'd say that is my yearly check-in, to listen to myself and just hear that little voice, and it's quiet but it's powerful, and she'll either tell me, change this, go here, follow this, leave that.
I love that. One of the things I often say is, in order to move on purpose with purpose, you have to pause on purpose with purpose. And I'm very mindful that pausing is something that is very difficult for a lot of people to do on so many different levels. I think, for some people it's if I stop, is everything gonna, am I gonna fall behind? I've worked and I've pushed so hard to get wherever I am. If I stop, am I gonna lose that? And so there's comfort in the pushing forward. I also think that pausing for a lot of people is and moments of reflection can be very painful. People have to face things that they don't want to face. But so I understand why it's a discomfort for people to pause. But I absolutely agree with you. Just taking a moment away from everything. And it could be, for me, that's, I've kind of got back into meditation now. So for me, it's just getting up early in the morning and sitting for 10 minutes. And yeah, I'm hearing what I need to do, or an idea comes, or whatever. And it's only when I take the time to pause to do that happens. So it's really good. Oh my gosh, Mads, this has been, I feel like we do need to do another episode, but this has been so good. It's just, I knew just from watching your work that there was just going to be so much depth and care to it, because you can't produce the kind of work that you produce and not care deeply about it as well. And I think that's something that's very, very unique to you. So thank you for putting incredible work into the world. Thank you for that work being so incredible that you actually sit in a room with change makers who can impact other women in sport. Like, is that not why we're here? Like, it's amazing. So huge thank you for that.
You are so welcome. I have to thank you because, it was when you reached out to me and asked me to be on the podcast, I was like, you sure? Me? Because you are such a change maker in your space. And it's only because of people like yourself, or it's because of you have played a big role in my journey, in the fact that you said, yes, go ahead, go forward, go and meet my group of people. And it's because of those yeses from you that has allowed me to progress. So I feel like we're singing from the same hymn sheet. So I have to really just equally praise you in being such an inspiration in the space. And thanks so much for having me on.
Oh my gosh, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. And just, eyes peeled, everybody, for Mads's continued work. So where can people find you, my love?
Instagram is where I post the most. I have a website. I need to up my TikTok game, but at the moment Instagram's the main place. So it's just my full name, which I'm sure you'll write on here, Madeleine Penfold.
Mads, thank you so much. I enjoyed this so much. I enjoyed where the conversation went, how we were able to link so many things. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great rest of your Friday.
Thank you. You too. Ciao, ciao.